Well, hello. Welcome to another episode of The Family Business, where I am thrilled to introduce you to Deanna Harshbarger. Deanna, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Welcome. This is where we talk about how careers and families are intertwined. There's no balance. That's all a myth, but we talk about some of the funny stuff that happens to you and your family and your career and how it's all mixed together. And I've known Deanna for a long time, and I thought she'd be a great guest here. Terrific personality. So if you wouldn't mind taking a minute to give everybody a bit of a snapshot of where you're at today, work-wise, and then this way we give people some context, and then we can get into some of the fun stuff.
Sure. So right now I am Vice President of Product at Cala Health. We're a bioelectronic medicine startup working to free people from the burden of chronic disease, in particular, action hand tremor.
So it's a wearable, correct?
It is a wearable, yes.
And so do they wear it 24/7?
They don't wear it 24/7. They wear it as needed. So when there's a moment in time when the patients would like to not have the tremor, they go ahead and put it on, and they do a stimulation session, and they get reduction of tremor during that stimulation session, and typically about 60 to 90 minutes afterwards.
So like right before mealtime?
Right before mealtime. A lot of our patients will use it when they want to either, eat, if they're going out in public, if they want to go out to lunch with their families. A lot of times it is something where when they want to go outside and be in public and they don't want people to know.
It's funny how some of the companies that we work with, some of the technologies are based more on, I know this may not fit, but the term that keeps coming to mind is it's kindness. It's like your company's allowing these people to have some dignity when they go and be with other people who don't have this affliction. So instead of standing out, they're able to sit with everybody and not look like there's something quote unquote not right. And
right.
I mean, and because it's not like it's a pacemaker or something immensely therapeutic, it just assists them in living a normal life.
Yes, that's exactly it. We call it, I guess in the technical terms, it's helping people get back to their activities of daily living, which are so critical and so tied to, how we interact with other people with our dignity. So it's really important for everybody to have that.
So it's interesting though, all right, so to give everybody a little background on her, she's a chemical engineer, which is not the first thing you think of when you think of healthcare. To an extent, there's some, but it's usually not the first option. So did you go to school with the thoughts that this is where you're going to wind up, or has healthcare more found you?
Never. Healthcare found me. I think it was a bit odd. I really loved cars when I was younger.
Really?
Yes. And so when I became a chemical engineer, I had plans to go into the automotive industry. And I started working in plastics. And I actually did that for a while and realized, while I was learning a lot, that was not my future career. So I went on to business school. And that's where I got introduced to healthcare.
Well, Kellogg does a great job of introducing people to healthcare. It's definitely a conduit. But let's circle back on the car piece. So I'm trying to imagine you in your driveway changing your oil at 15 years old. Were you that kind of kid?
My father was a mechanical engineer.
Oh, okay.
So so I was the person that held the the wrenches and whatever it was that he was doing, always fixing things. And funny, he used to get Car and Driver magazine because and everything wasn't digital back then.
I remember that.
And so I used to read it and I thought it was fun. So I really thought, the automotive industry, this is really cool. It's, if you think about it, very consumer focused design. And so I really like that. But, when I decided to become a chemical engineer, I thought, I like math, I like chemistry, as a true 17, 18-year-old, I'll put those two together.
All right. So Are you, is it speed that you like? Like, what kind of
Yes.
car do you gravitate towards?
I do like speed. You could probably look at my historical driving record.
It's probably
It's
been
not the
expunged by
best.
now, Deanna. You're probably okay.
Don't tell my children.
Nah, same with me. So you got a lead foot. We've established that. Good for you. Yeah, that's crazy because we have something else in common, by the way. I'm from Cleveland. My uncle was a professor at Case.
Oh,
And so how was your time there? How'd you enjoy it?
it was a lot of fun. Again, being an engineer, like the majority of Case is
Yeah.
a world of engineers. And for me, I grew up in Ohio, so being in Cleveland, that was considered a big city. And so
What town were you
love.
from?
I was from a small town called Sydney, so it is north of Dayton, west of Columbus. And unless you're from Ohio, you're usually not familiar with those.
Yeah, I've got family in Columbus, family in Youngstown, family in Cleveland. And all my family went to Ohio State, University of Cincinnati, or my wife went to Ohio University. Like we're Ohio people. We're Buckeyes for sure. Although I went to University of Florida and no one talked to me for a bit, but I had to break that chain. So let's talk about the Kellogg piece. So do you think there's something that Kellogg does to encourage people to go to healthcare? Because I know several people who have made that decision, and I don't know if it's coursework or if it's speakers or if it's something that the school does, but that's an interesting thread.
It is, because historically, when you think of Kellogg, you think of fundamental, basic marketing, right? And you think of more of consumer packaged goods. They actually have an excellent healthcare program. And so for me personally, when I went, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do coming out of business school. I actually thought, I really wanted to go into consulting. And at the time I went, I won't tell you what year, they had a lot of graduates going into all the major consulting firms. They had a great program feeding into those. And so I looked at the consulting, but then I thought, what I'm going to do is evaluate all of the different types of industry while I'm there. So I went to practically every company presentation that came on campus. And what I loved about healthcare was, you're taught, how do you increase the consumption? How are you a general manager? And I thought at the end of the day, especially having come from the chemical industry, I want to come home and increase the consumption of something that's good for you. And that's really healthcare. And so then I got involved in all of the healthcare programs. They have excellent classes that started with the history of healthcare, talking about reimbursement within healthcare. And then I did my summer internship at Johnson & Johnson. And there I also got an amazing view of how you run consumer packaged goods, pharmaceutical, and medical device. So it was a great learning.
Yeah, I think that's where I met you, is that you were at Cordis.
Yes.
Yeah, and you live down here in Miami Lakes. How'd you like it down here?
Oh, it was fantastic. So I love Miami. I think it is extremely international. And it was a great environment. Also, I think the great thing that J&J did was they were a fan of rotating people through all of the different operating units. And so there were a variety of people with different backgrounds of all the different operating companies within J&J. And so you got that whole perspective there. So it was just a fantastic experience from a work standpoint, and then also from a life standpoint. My background is actually Colombian. So my mother is from Colombia.
Is that
And
right?
so getting an opportunity
Medellin or Bogota, Cali?
Bogota.
Okay.
So getting an opportunity to live in Miami was fantastic too.
Huh. So let's talk about what else happened at Case, where if I remember the story right, that's where you met Tom.
Yes, that is right.
So to clue everybody in really quick is that she's married to a terrific guy who's brilliant and incredibly supportive guy, because I knew you when you first got married living down here, and he was just the ideal husband as far as being great
He'll be
for,
happy to hear you say
yeah.
that.
Because I just remember our conversations of him just saying, look, I'll find a job somewhere else because you moved around a bit. And it's just, it's hard. I mean, he's a brilliant lawyer, and yet he was willing to give to you quite a few times. So how'd y'all meet? How'd that story go?
Yes. So he is older than I am. So we met when I was an undergraduate. And yeah, so we actually met when I was a freshman. So we knew each other, but we didn't start dating because I was an engineer. So at Case, half the campus where all the engineers were, all their classes were in the same spot. And he was not an engineer. So I didn't see him day to day. He went on to become an attorney. So I would see him periodically at some of the college parties. And then a couple years later, he was actually graduating, and I was still in school, and that's when we started to date. So he was going on to do his graduate work, and there I was still an undergraduate.
But he went to law school at Case also, didn't he?
He did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So good. So that works out. You don't have to do the long distance thing.
No.
Awesome. And so on top of this, Tom and Deanna have 2 children. Mateus is 11.
Yes.
And Evelyn is 8.
Yes.
All right. So you have the flip that I have. You have the older boy. Does he look out for his sister? Because I've found that the older boys, they're really oblivious. The older girls are great. They look out for the little brothers, but the older boys are like, she'll be fine.
I have to say, he has a sweetheart. So he's very kind, and he looks out from her from the standpoint he would never let anything bad happen to her, but he doesn't miss a chance to give her a hard time when he thinks is appropriate.
Yeah, he takes her French fries and does all
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I know. I had an older brother, and he just beat me senseless and took everything that was mine, and he denies it all as we're adults. He goes, that never happened. I'm like, all of it happened. He did. My mother just is in the back going, he did everything to you. And you had mentioned that you just got a dog. How's that working out?
Yes. So that has been a learning experience. We love the dog. The kids really, really, really wanted a dog. I had a dog growing up, and Tom was kind of like, well, I don't want a cat. So let's, a dog is okay. And his only request was, I don't want a tiny dog. So
I like this guy more and more. I'm the same.
Yeah. He's like, I want a big dog. So we got a Bernedoodle.
I have a Bernedoodle. Are you kidding me?
No. Oh, I could learn so much from you.
Yeah, mine's 3.
So as you probably know, a Bernedoodle is not a small dog.
No, mine's 80 pounds.
Okay, that makes sense because she's been growing at massive rates. She's 6 months now, and just weighed in at a whopping 49 pounds.
Yeah, I love it. Mine looks like a giant raccoon. That's his coloring. He's a merle. What does yours look like?
She is a tuxedo, so she's black and white.
It's a great breed.
The kids named her. Her name is Oreo.
Perfect.
She's black and white.
Awesome. Love it. They're hyper for the next year or 2, so just settle in. They eat everything. They do all that stuff, and then it gets worse because he counter-surfs and eats everything. He just ate my son's waffles this morning. Literally just happened today, and all you hear is, "Damn it, Oliver!" and my wife and son are chasing him around the house. He has half a waffle out of his mouth. And I just laugh because there's no point in getting mad. I mean, well, you left it on the counter. What do you want him to do? He's a dog.
And he's huge.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So now you have, dual career. You've got 2 kids. You have the dog now. I would love to talk to you about how you work out your travel and your day and your life, because now that COVID's somewhat over the hump, that you're now back to probably normal travel.
Yeah.
Talk to me a bit about your life when you leave or when Tom has to leave. Like, how does it go in your house?
Yeah. So I am back to travel, but strangely, my life pre-COVID, my travel was crazy. I was doing a ton of international travel, and then, combined with US travel. So I would say what I do now is very, very manageable. So I do travel, but it's it's a lot less. I could do easy trips where I've gone for one night, 2 days, or 2 nights, 3 days, but that one's not as often. And so it's not that bad. And so Tom is used to it. He's amazing. And the kids are used to it too. Although they got used to me being home during the pandemic. So I think that piece was a little bit harder. You still get the, I'll be, I'm getting on a plane tomorrow morning early. So you get the, oh, but I'll be back, 2 days later, or, so that they're like,
better than them
okay.
going, awesome, mom's leaving.
Yeah. Well, I think that hits in the teen years, right?
Well, it's funny. My daughters went off to college, and my son loves the fact that there's less attention to the kids now because he's 16, and I trust him. My wife, for the most part, trusts him, and he drives, and so he does all his own stuff, and so he gets a lot of peace. So he said to me the other day, because my wife went to go visit my daughter, God, was it last week? And he quietly goes, don't tell anybody, although I'm telling everybody now, don't tell anybody, but it's awesome when Mom and Olivia are not here. I go, are you serious? He goes, yeah, nobody asks me to do anything. No one gives me any grief of any kind. I can eat what I want, watch what I want, do what I want. I'm like, all right, bud, I would like you to be less excited when they're not here, but all right, I get it. I was a 16-year-old boy once too. So you'll see when Mateus is older, he'll just grunt at you like most teenage boys do. The girls are better. The boys just grunt. So how do you sit with Evelyn in particular? Because, she's going to grow up, and I'm very involved in a lot of the women's organizations within medical device. I just believe in perpetuating that normalization of women having careers and families. There's no reason you can't have both. But I'm curious what she notices and what you guys talk about, because you're trying to set a foundation for her on what's best for her, but also what's out there and what's available. So I'm curious how you have those conversations, because she's getting old enough now to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I would say that it's for both of them, for both Mateus and Evelyn, it's been their entire life that both of us have had careers, and then they see us both go and do a variety of different things and travel. And so I like to say that that's normal, so that they understand that these are all different, options for them. So I would say, when I talk to Evelyn about it in particular, I do probably a lot of the same things that a lot of my colleagues do, which is you talk about, you can choose whatever it is that you want to do. I mean, she could choose to do something totally different. What my career is does not have to be what she does. For example, she loves art. And so she says, when I ask her, what do you want to do? She's like, I would like to be an artist. I'm like, that's great. So I am not artistic whatsoever. So, but if she wants to have a career, then I tell her, oh, well, do you know that, your aunt actually is really good in art and does all of these creative things. Let's go see some of that and see what she does. So I think it's just showing them that they can choose whatever they want to choose, and that they have a choice in it too. That it's not what we say they want to do. It's not what we think is their best path. Now, my thoughts may change when they get older in their teen years.
The conversations get real. I'm in the middle of it now with one, and the other one's coming up. And I could tell you that you'll do the same staring that you do when they say they want to be an artist. And you're like, okay. And when they're 8, it's fine. But when they're 18 and they say, I want to do something that doesn't make a huge living, you're like, all right, that's great. In the back of your mind, like, okay, I'm working till I'm 90, and so that's the deal. Well, that's terrific. I'm glad to hear that you have that kind of mentality, because now she can feel comfortable doing anything. She doesn't ever have to think my mom's going to think less of me. I'm not a business person. I'm not a lawyer
Yeah.
like my dad. I just going to be me, which is what you always want. You know, just want them to be the best version of themselves. As long as you don't get that comment that sometimes the moms or dads even get, which is so-and-so's mom's always home making dinner. So-and-so's dad doesn't work a lot of hours. You're like, great. Appreciate that.
I feel lucky that I don't hear that. I did hear from some of the teachers before too, like, you know, when you go to the parent teacher conferences and they're like, oh yeah, I know when you're traveling. Like, yeah, we can tell.
She doesn't have any socks on. What do you mean?
It's like, well, you know, especially when they're younger, the kids are a little bit more out of sorts because it's just not the, you know, it's not the normal routine. But yeah, I mean, but you know, when we're both home, there's still, you know, I sent them to school with empty lunch boxes.
Yep.
That still happens too.
Now, listen, my son's 16 and sometimes I'll see his lunch sitting on the counter that I packed. My wife goes crazy that I pack his lunch. I'm like, I got 1 more year or 2 more years to pack his lunch, and then I'm never packing his lunch again. So leave me alone. You know, I'm really tight with my boy. We're buds. So family's an interesting thing for you because you've got family kind of all over the world, if I remember right. So let's start from the beginning. So your mother's Colombian. Is your dad American?
He is, yes.
So how did your mom from Colombia wind up in the middle of Ohio?
It's not a popular destination.
Well, it ain't their first choice, I would imagine.
No, it's not. It's definitely not. So she was a Spanish professor. And so,
really?
Yes. And so she was doing different, different universities teaching for certain periods of time. And so she just happened to be teaching at a university in Ohio when they met at a party. So
does your dad speak any Spanish?
No.
I had a feeling that was coming.
I mean, there were words.
Yeah. That's great. So did you pick up from her? I mean, she's obviously well educated or she couldn't be a professor. And is that something that you saw early and that encouraged you to be more academically oriented? Because you're obviously a really good student. So I'm curious, like, how this all starts. Is that something that was encouraging to you? Like, how did you push to be such a good student early on?
Yeah. So, I mean, it really came from both sides. I mean, my mother, because she, you know, came from a different country, she had traveled. That was one thing that she really told us over and over, was like, listen, there's this whole world out there. There are so many things that you can do. Go live your life and, you know, and enjoy it. So she was always like, go travel and see the world. And my father as well, too. You know, he was drafted in the Army and he was lucky enough to have spent time in Germany. And so that was another thing that he said, too, was you should go travel and you should go see the world. So my siblings and I felt that way. And we saw that it was a path. We saw that my mother grew up with her family and then went on and lived in a different country, which was very odd for that time frame, especially to be far away. There wasn't as much travel to pick up and move to a different country, you know, by choice, and to decide to live that far from your family. It was a big deal back in those years.
So she came to the U.S. by herself?
Yes.
Look at that. I got to meet this one. I love when I hear stuff like that. So you have siblings. Are you in the middle?
I'm the baby.
Okay. Are they in healthcare, or are you the only one in the family in healthcare?
My brother's in healthcare too, but that wasn't where he started. He kind of ended up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and your in-laws and your family, I don't think they live there anymore, but they're European and from Belgium, right?
Yes. Yes.
So how does that go? What kind of Flemish or Dutch do they pass on to your kids? As far as I hear, the names are clearly, you know, from there, and as far as everything else goes, holidays, eating, those kind of things. What do they pass on?
Yeah, so the kids get traditions from both sides of the family, which I think is really exciting. You know, from the Belgian side, you know, you got to take all the great stuff, which is, you know, the chocolate, they've recently discovered the value of Belgian chocolate, the fries.
Yeah. The kids managed to find that. Don't they do, and this is ignorant on my part because I don't know exactly, but don't they do Christmas a little different? It's not really Santa Claus. It's something else. Or am I
Well,
wrong on that?
There is still a Santa Claus. A lot of times it is on Christmas Eve.
Okay.
And same thing with Latin culture as well, too, is you really do the celebration on Christmas Eve.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I'd read somewhere, whether it was the Netherlands or Belgium, that they do Christmas a little different. And so have you ever lived overseas yourself?
No. Not permanently.
Yeah.
I was an exchange student, and then I just did some college courses, and then a lot of international travel for work, but never more than 6 months.
Yeah, it's funny. My wife and I talk about that as like a bucket list thing for us, and every time we do it, we kind of chicken out. My kids are not old enough yet. My son's got 2 more years in the house anyhow, so I could just use that as an excuse. But in 2 years, I'm gonna have to either be a talker or a doer when it comes to that. I don't know. We'll see. I'll figure it out. And so, how does your son look at Tom as far as being an attorney and all the things that go along with it? Because attorneys, it's a number one, it's a lot of hours. Number two, there's a certain kind of reputation with it, and there's a certain kind of mindset and a communication style. And I'm curious if your son has emulated any of that.
Yeah, so I would say, well, especially so the job that Tom has had, I think a little bit pre-pandemic, was he moved directly out of being either in-house or in a firm. He had done that all before. And so he is an editor for, one of those large companies that creates, if you are an attorney, you subscribe to the service and you get, all the documentation and the checklists and things that you need to do your job. So, so he's moved a little bit out of the more traditional attorney.
Great.
Yeah. And that's been a huge help from a family standpoint, because, there were times in our career, both of us, when we were both like, he'd be like, well, I need to be in Israel this week. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be in France. So what are they going to do?
Well, it's always been, I always imagine it's like those old Westerns or it's like a Mexican standoff where everyone just looks at each other and you wait for the other one to blink. And finally someone goes, fine, I can move mine or I can change my meeting. Because my wife and I went through it a couple times too. And she doesn't back down very well. And she's probably the only person on the planet that I back down to. I'm like, all right, I'll make mine work. But there were times I'm like, listen, I didn't make the date of the conference. That's when it is.
Yeah.
I got to go. And so it's worked out. We've only had a couple of situations where we had to fly in the mother-in-law or do something like that. Do you have family around you to help you out, or are you guys just you?
So our in-laws, right the week that of the pandemic that the world shut down, they moved here. Which
great.
was fantastic. Yes. So they live very close by. It's so wonderful for the kids to have family nearby. And prior to that, we leaned a lot on Tom's sister. She's absolutely amazing. She lives on the other side of the United States, and she would come and fly. And so, yeah, when both of us were traveling, like, she came and she would take care of the kids. She's amazing.
So what do the kids call his parents? What's the Belgian term for grandparents?
It's Oma and Opa.
I wouldn't have guessed that. All right.
And then on my side, it's Abuelita and Grandpa.
Well, I'm in Miami. I know that like the back of my hand.
You know that one.
Yeah, that one's easy. Is your mom a small person?
She would not like me to say she's small, but she's a little bit shorter than I am.
Yeah, I mean, because doesn't Abuelita kind of imply that it's not a very large person?
Yes, like the Ita part.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say, okay. Yeah, I mean, my mom we always make fun when she gets to triple digits. She breaks 100 once in a while. She's built like a chicken, and she's just really skinny. And so she's tiny. I mean, my family's small. We're all small people, and we're kind of hard and easy to miss at the same time. So I'm very curious. What's buzzing in my head is the whole car thing. So what's your dream car? Have you ever done like one of those where you drive like a race car, where you get to go a couple 100 miles an hour, or you've never done anything that kind of speed?
I haven't done that. I would love to. I think that would be fun. Like they have those tracks now that you can go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you can go and do that. I'm I guess very classic. I'd love a good 911, that's
All right. That's funny. Do your kids share that with you? Is that something that you, and especially your son, probably get into? Because at that age, he starts noticing every car.
Yeah. We'll drive by and be like, ooh, I like that one and that one.
That's awesome. It's funny. My son started taking pictures. Like we'd see something like a McLaren or something very. It's Miami, so that stuff's kind of common.
Yeah,
in Southern Cal, you probably see it too.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
but Miami is like it's concentrated. Very.
It is. It's a very. Let's just say it's a bit showy down here, and so people want to make sure they know what you got. It's great. So from the work standpoint, I've seen you take from Cordis to BSC to Medtronic to Cala, and all those decisions, they've all been obviously a step up. You've done phenomenally well in your career, but I'm curious, when you make those choices and you sit down with Tom, and I don't know if the kids were even old enough to be aware of what's going on in some of these choices, but how'd you make these decisions? And, considering his career and everything else going on, I'm curious if you have a process of sorts. Like, what do you guys do when these things come up?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to say we have like a very, structured process to have these discussions, but we don't. It really is, it's a conversation. And I feel very, very lucky that we're a partnership. And so it's one of those things where, people always talk about, oh, well, somebody always has to compromise. And it's like, no, we look at it as a partnership, and it's just flexing. And like, you need this now. Okay, then, this is yours. You go for that. Because at the end of the day, it's, you both have to be happy and fulfilled in what you're doing, because that's what makes you a better person too. So when we sit down and we have those conversations, it's about, well, what's the pro and the con of it? I can't say that we make a list, we don't get that detailed. It's more of like, how do we feel about this? And I think at least for my moves that I've made, a lot of them have been related to, moving to a different city, moving to a different place. Most of them have been just making a decision to go to business school was moving, making a decision, the job post business school, and then the multiple jobs I've had from them, almost all of them have involved a move. And I think that, we both look at it as a way to broaden our horizons. Tom lived all over the place as a kid. His parents moved all the time. Not that he says that's a great thing all the time for kids if you're constantly moving, because he lived that. But at the same time, he sees the value in getting to know a different place. And what benefit do we get from that as a family? So I have to say that our last jobs, both of us, we haven't had to move the kids big time from school. I think the move that we did in California was, when Mateus was still young, so he wasn't in a school. But other than that, we haven't had to move them yet. I think that'd be a big conversation, because I think there it's the focus on, what's best for them.
Yeah, there's an interesting balance there between teaching them about being resilient and understanding that change and life is fluid. And also the other side of it, which is, but they're having fun. They have their friends. They feel great here. They like their school. They're looking forward to high school or middle school.
Yeah.
Your son is in 5th grade?
6th.
So he's in middle school now. How'd that transition go?
Well, actually here, the K through 6 was all in the same school.
Oh, okay.
So next year he goes to official junior high. 7th grade.
Yeah, get ready. Usually the elementary school, it's the same teacher all day. They love you. They want you to come in and bring snacks and whatever. In middle school, they're like, why are you here? He's got 6 or 7 teachers. Send them an email. Maybe they'll respond to you. It is not. I mean, the drop-off is so steep that you're like, you don't want to hear from me at all, do you? I'm like, nope, we really don't.
Nope.
So
they're
prepare
like,
yourself.
In class doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yep. Yeah, they just move them through the system. You get a few ones that are great and they care, but a lot of them are just so overwhelmed that they're like, listen, yeah, just write it down and send me an email and I'll respond the best I can. Well, that's cool. All right. Well, look, I've always admired that you talk about Tom in a positive way and that you make these decisions together. Because the saying at my house is your success is my success. And that's just the way that we do it. My wife has had great moments and I've cheered for her. And then when my turn comes, she's just as supportive. And that's the way that we do it. It's never I did it, it's we did it.
Yeah.
And
I think it has to be that. It has to be that way for it to work and for everybody to be happy and satisfied. You don't want anybody to come out of it saying, oh, I picked a short straw here, because that's not going to work in the long run. So it really is, it's, looking at it together to say what's right for us.
Yeah. The only time it gets rough, and I still have done this a couple times, is when it's someone else's turn a couple times in a row. And you're like, all right, okay, yeah, our success is your success, great. But I found that over 20 years of marriage that's been one of the secrets, is just always being excited and celebrate when something great happens, and when something, like my wife just started a new job, and we celebrated and we made a big deal about it, and it was and I could tell like it mattered to her, and so even at 20 years you still have to keep making sure that you're aware of how important that is to them, and that it's important to us as well. And you have to get the kids on board because they don't get it. I'm like, guys, give your mom a hug. And like, why? I said, because something awesome happened to her today. All right. They don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think about, when we left Miami, we loved Miami. We had a great time in Miami, and we made the decision together because when Cordis moved, they were moving up to New Jersey.
I remember.
And they were like, okay, here's your option. You can, and I was lucky. I was the only person out of my team where they said, we'd love for you to move to New Jersey. But Tom and I sat down and we said, New Jersey wasn't on our life plan at this point in time.
It's in your bottom 10 list.
And
I get it.
And even though, I mean, it was just such a great opportunity, at the same time, it was like, this is, for us, that wasn't the right move. He had just started at a law firm, because actually when we moved to Miami, we thought there was an acquisition that was going to occur and we were going to move West Coast. So for his career at that point in time, he had made some decisions to say, yeah, I'm going to, if we're just going to turn around and move from Miami to the West Coast, then I'm not going to, hop into a law firm right away. So he waited to do that. And then, when he was in, then J&J was like, hey, how about New Jersey? It's like, whew, how many bars does this man have to take?
The guy can practice in every state in the country.
He does joke that like every subsequent bar that he took, because we kept moving to states that did not have reciprocity. So he had to take a new bar. There were certain, like California, Florida, they don't like a lot of attorneys in those states. And so they make everybody take the bar regardless of how long you've been practicing. So he used to joke, he's like, yeah, each bar I took, like, you kept getting me bigger gifts. I'm like, that's right.
It's just a coincidence, Tom. Awesome. Well, look, you've been every bit as personable and fun as I thought you'd be. Really open, and it gives people a chance to see what it's like for people who seem like their life is great. They're executives, and yet their lives are just as crazy as everyone else's. And so that's the whole point of this conversation that I have with people, is to show that it's completely humanized, and everyone has the same craziness when they're traveling and running around, and someone else is taking care of their kids. Like, we all do it. Deanna, thanks so much for being on here. It was fantastic. It was every bit as good as I thought it would be. Did you enjoy it?
I had a great time. So much fun catching up with you, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah, we go way back. Well, this has been The Family Business, where we talk about how family and business intertwined, and Deanna Harshbarger has been a sensational guest. Take care.